Hi everyone, delighted you can join us. And today, I'm Susan Fulton. I'm the Director of People at Home Group, and I've got a fantastic panel for you today. We're going to talk about trailblazers, people who've really made a difference in their working lives, and with colleagues about how they've really cracked that nut of flexible working. So some great ideas and insights. Before we get cracking, I'm just going to ask each of our speakers to give us a little insight into who they are and what they're all about. So I'm going to ask Annabelle.
Thank you, Susan. I'm Annabelle. I'm a managing partner at M&C Saatchi, the creative agency in London. I've worked flexibly with them for the last 7+ years. I've got 2 daughters, an 8 and almost 6-year-old, and I currently work 4 days a week from home. Previously to COVID, I was 4 days a week in the office and leaving early one day to collect the girls. So that's me in a nutshell.
Welcome, welcome. Brian.
Hi Susan, hi everyone. I'm Brian Ballantyne. I work at Amazon in Luxembourg. I wrote a book called Confessions of a Working Father. I've got 2 kids who are 13 and 11. So in addition to being a working parent, I cram a lot of voluntary work into my working week as well. And I'm big passionate for kind of flexible working.
Brilliant, thank you. And hi Lux.
Hi, so I'm Lakshmi Sundaram. I'm a senior recruitment advisor at Surrey County Council. I work part of the central recruitment team, but specifically supporting children's services with their recruitment needs. I'm a working parent of 3 children, and I also support my brother with caring responsibilities for my mum.
Brilliant. So we've got a real diverse panel today and some real trailblazing ideas that you were telling me about earlier. So let's kick off exploring them. So my first question, I'm really interested, how have you designed ways of working that suit your circumstances? And what would you say you should consider? And what advice would you give to others who are starting this journey? And where will we go first? Brian, tell us yours.
Oh, that's a great question. I think Lux and Annabelle have probably got better answers than me. I think I'm a typical man, without generalizing too much, in that I do flexible working under the radar. I haven't asked to get paid less. I haven't asked to officially work fewer hours. I happy to get paid a full-time salary and work as productively as I can in the gaps between other things like taking my kids to school or doing voluntary activities as well. So, I do have the ability to kind of work, even before COVID, work from home. I haven't kind of officially done kind of part-time hours, but maybe Lux or Annabelle, you've done that?
I'm sure they have. Annabelle, tell us some thoughts on yourself.
Yeah, so I work Monday to Friday. Monday to Thursday. I don't work on Fridays. That's my time with my children, and now they're both at school, so me time. I think the way I've designed it has changed over the last 7 years. It's changed a lot, actually. At the moment, it works really well because the girls are at school. During lockdown, it was obviously much harder trying to teach 2-year groups and work from home. I think the way I designed it to make it work for me was setting really clear boundaries. So when I'm working, I'm working. And when I'm being a mum, I'm being a mum. And that was much easier when I was commuting, because I'd use that commute to switch roles and switch hats. And I've had to learn new techniques in order to switch much faster. So at the moment I'm stuck in my loft, so I have to use the commute down 2 flights of stairs to switch into mummy mode. And also carving out time for me, because it can be very easy to just be the working Annabelle and the mum Annabelle, and actually I realise it's really, really important to find time for me. So that's sort of how I've designed it for myself. Do you want me to do the other bit about advice, about negotiating? This is written into my contract.
Yeah, others want to make changes, so what advice would you give them? Second part of the question.
So when you're about to go into the conversation about having flexible working into your contract, I'd really recommend thinking about what you bring to the table that's unique to you. What are your strengths? And really, don't be embarrassed about selling yourself. And if you put it through the lens of your strengths, it'll be much more attractive to your line manager to go, okay, well, I can see the benefit of this flexible working arrangement. I mean, one of my line managers has said, I'd much rather have 4 days of you, Annabelle, than no days of you. So, because I was like, right, this is what I bring to the party. These are the things I want. Also think about the logistics, like into the detail, like, right, how is pick up and drop off going to work if you're working flexibly around children? get into the nitty gritty of like the boring practical side, but also be really mindful about that flexible working should just be that, flexible on both ends. So once you've written it into your contract, doesn't mean that that's set in stone. You can then revisit it if it's not working for either party. It's just the start of a conversation, I would suggest.
Some really great advice there. And look, so what advice would you give and how do you structure this?
So it's interesting, and for my part is when I had my first 2 children, I worked full time. I worked a 9-to-5 job and I worked in London. When I was pregnant with my third, I moved to Surrey County Council, closer to home. So I went into this role choosing to work part-time. So I went in actually covering someone's maternity cover 4 days a week. I then was made permanent in that role. I think for me, working flexibly has meant that I have a good relationship actually with my children's school. So my kids actually go to school to breakfast club. I start work at 8:15 in the morning, 8:15, 8:30. And then I pick them up at after school club 2 days a week. So 2 days I work a full day up to from 8:15, 8:30 to 5 o'clock. And then 2 days I actually do the pickup, which has been lovely because I get to meet the school teachers, I get to meet other parents, whereas before when I was working a full week, don't think they even knew who I was. So that's been lovely. But when I come home, my kids enjoy that downtime. They know mummy now needs to work another hour or so, but at 5:30, my computer gets shut down. I actually close up my computer and I put it away. So they now know that this is my time with them. And that's worked really well. I think my advice would be just being able to be honest about what your working week needs to look like. As I mentioned, I have caring responsibilities. And I think COVID and this current situation has had an impact because I've had to have that conversation and keep people engaged virtually as to what my working week looks like, not just my managers, but my colleagues. So I would say to them, look, I'm taking my mum to an appointment, but actually Friday in the core hours when my kids are at school, I'll be working those hours. So I'll join you for that team meeting. And so that honest conversation and having that relationship with your manager, I think is really important.
Yes, I think that's really key. And I think there's a theme there from both of you in terms of that clarity in the downtime, which I think is really important. I know when people in my team have asked for flexible working, it is really clear to be honest and transparent with each other. Otherwise, neither party understands what on earth's happening. So I guess building on that, I'm really interested from all three of you as to the ways that you've worked flexibly, whether it's now under COVID scenario or in the past, has helped, or perhaps do you think hindered or impacted your career path? Annabelle, would you like to take us through that one, please?
Yeah. So I've worked, as I say, for the last 8 years flexibly within the same organisation, but in lots of different roles with lots of different line managers who had different attitudes to flexible working. Thankfully, the majority of my line managers were like super supportive of my flexible approach and have given me the opportunity to learn and grow into new roles. I mean, I started working flexibly as a senior account director, and I'm now a managing partner. So it sort of speaks for itself about my progression. That said, there were probably times when I felt overlooked, not necessarily for promotion, but for projects that I would have really loved to have got my teeth into, but people maybe thought I had enough on my plate. But actually in hindsight, the route I've taken sort of really worked for me and my family. And I'm really happy with the success that I've found in my career. One thing I have started doing is sort of sharing my work successes with my daughters. For me, it's important for them to see me not just working, but really enjoying my job and achieving within it, because I feel like I've got a sense of being a role model for them. And actually, when I first came back to work after my first daughter, I was running quite a large team and they were all young women. And I was the only mum in the whole of my department. And I was the only person working flexibly. And I felt it very acutely, the sense that I had to show them that it is possible to come back to your career in an advertising agency, client facing, and work flexibly and be a mum. And I feel so passionately about flexible working that about 2.5 years ago, I took on the role of being co-chair of the employee-led network for families. It was originally for parents, but I built that out because people have, you know, caring responsibilities outside of having children. So yeah, it's something that I haven't ever held me back, but that's just maybe my personality.
That's brilliant. I think it's really interesting when you said as well that people perhaps made assumptions that you have too much on your plate. Yeah. And I think sometimes that's done perhaps with the best intentions. But again, it's really good to check in with the person that is the case. Otherwise, you know, people do get overlooked and perhaps then don't feel that they're getting the opportunities they deserve. So that's a really good point. Lux, what would you say in terms of the same question?
So for me, I think, you know, I made a choice to be a parent. I chose to have 3 children. And my husband, who's a teacher, he supports me 100%. But obviously, being a secondary school teacher means that in the working week, he's not always available. But for me, I think as an organisation, they've supported me. I came to Surrey County Council. I had my university, I did my university degree, I did my CIP, all before I had children. And I always said, I would never continue to study, this is it. But actually, when I came to Surrey, I took on an apprenticeship. I did a team leader apprenticeship. I then was given the opportunity to second into a restructure specialist role. Children's services went through a massive restructure. And I, even working 4 days, was asked to lead and oversee the recruitment element of that with Tom, who some of you have met, was very supportive, who is my line manager. I then seconded from that role into being a senior recruitment advisor, helping with their transformation on recruitment. And now I've been made permanent in that role. And throughout that time, there's always been an element of growth and support. And even now, within my current role, I'm thinking about the future, and I'm thinking about doing a project management qualification to support my current role. So I don't see myself as this is it. I see myself as flexibility, giving me this opportunity of learning and growing, but in a way that will work well with my current situation.
Brilliant, that's great. And that career growth just sounds fantastic, and different learning experiences, because I think it's also about a flexible career path as well as flexibility in working patterns, which I think is really clear. So Brian, what advice would you give on that, how things have worked or impacted your career path with flexibility?
Yeah, I guess my career hasn't been a path, more it's been a kind of random journey, really. I think from when I got married to my wife, I kind of quit my job in the UK and followed her to Luxembourg. She was at the European Court, so I just decided, well, I can take a break in my career for a few months. Maybe, you know, she might do that later on. So then I had to switch back from marketing into finance, and did that for a while. I mean, you know, had our kids, came back to London, then came back to Luxembourg again. So. And I've moved between different roles. So my career's been a bit all over the place. And I think what I've actually done is kind of redefined how I think about, you know, careers, not as a kind of a single path, but more of a portfolio of things I like to do. And I think flexibility's, you know, given me that option. And it's funny, last week I posted on LinkedIn that I'd set up a new startup called Men for Inclusion. And I got all these messages, about 300 messages saying, oh, wow, you've quit Amazon. It's like, just this idea that you couldn't do 2 things at once. It's like, oh no, Amazon's still paying my mortgage. I'm just putting all my passion into this other thing. So, so just the idea that you can do different things. I think as I've managed, you know, people in their 20s and seen them doing that, they're always talking about passive income, and, you know, they've got, you know, other jobs as photographers for newspapers as well as working. It's inspiring, really, and we can learn so much from the next generation coming through, that we don't have to be stuck in the same job, you know, every day, all our lives. We can do lots of different things. So yeah, I think the idea of a career, I think, is kind of propaganda in some ways. I think we can define it how we want and do what we want. So that's my approach. That's how I'm kind of tying up a kind of random career that's kind of gone.
I love that organic feel of it, and just, you know, making it, as you said, fit your passions and what you really love. I think you've all said that. If you really love something, you make it work, and you do find ways around it. And employers get so much out of people as well, in terms of that respect and that insight. Just building on insights, I guess, is my next question. And that's around what insights could you share about how to build great working relationships as a person who works flexibly? And I guess that'll be interesting as well in the current pandemic, that have relationships changed as flexibility's perhaps changed? Lux, would you like to take us through that one first, please?
Sure. So in my role, even though I work for the central recruitment team, I'm very much meeting service. I see them practically every day. I think technology has played a massive part in this. We have team chats. We have a chat that if someone doesn't feel in the right mood, they'll just put a gift up. They'll just talk about what they're doing. As Annabelle said, we'll say, you know, we're going to walk to the shops or go for a run, but also it's also having that space to also let people know what you're doing and what you're up to. Every day we have that kind of sort of a 15-minute, 20-minute huddle, as it were, so we can just catch up with everyone, see everyone's face, and have that level of communication. For me, I've kind of put things in place so that my diary is very clear. So you know the periods of time I'm not available because of pickup, and periods, my core working hours, where you can definitely put meetings in place. So it's just always having that honest relationship with people and building that trust, and that's the theme in all of this. It's having that trust with an individual to say, you know, I trust you to work. I'm not going to time check you, but you're going to deliver on that work because there's an expectation.
Yes, and that's something very clear in our organisation. It's about, you know, managing on outputs and not presenteeism, which I think is, you know, just the old world in many respects. But also something that you mentioned, very much about that well-being, and a lot more people using flexibility to go for the walk at lunchtime, you know, to go for a run or do whatever, to break that whole work piece. Otherwise, it can get quite draining, and it's not flexible at all. Brian, what would you say to that question about those insights and working relationships?
Yeah, no, I love what you were both saying there. And I think if you don't make time for wellness, you need to make time for sickness. It's so important now that we really focus on that. I think I had some insights probably about 10 years ago. You know, when my first child was born, my manager had a baby exactly the same month. So he was going through flexible working challenges as I was as well. So it seemed to be working pretty fine, and he understood my situation. But when I moved roles, I found that, you know, it just wasn't working with my manager, and I just kept hitting this brick wall. There was misunderstandings. They wanted things straight away. I wasn't there because I was picking up the kids. So I invested in a professional coach, my friend Nikki. And you know, what I realized was that there's this thing in NLP, in neuro-linguistic programming, called through time and in time people. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's some people, when they think about the future, they look in front of them and the past is behind. They're really in the moment. And some people, when they think about the future, they sit to the right and the past to the left. And I'm one of those people that really kind of is through time. Is always thinking about what's coming up, what's gone, and always scheduling. And when I have a boss who's through time, it can work really well because they can plan ahead. They know when I'm going to be there. But if I have a boss who's in time, who just like, they're just in the moment and they're like, oh, no, I need you now. And they can't predict when it's going to happen. It really doesn't work for me. And I've got nothing against that. These people are excellent and you can work really well with them as colleagues. But as a manager, for someone who's working flexibly, I found that doesn't work for me at all. Because they just want me to be available in their time. So I've just realized when I've got into roles like that, I've and recently changed to a new manager who's more through time, who's more kind of plans ahead. And as a manager myself, you know, working with someone who's working part-time for me 3 days and part-time for another company, for another part of the business for 2 other days, you need to be able to kind of, you know, structure time that way. So just that insight into different ways we think about time and different personality types of managers that are going to work for me or not work for me, I think that's really helped.
Yeah, that's really good insight. And I think that cultural fit as to what's working for me and being clear what doesn't, I think is really helpful to empower you to know what flexibility is or isn't, and what's going to make you happy. Thank you. That was really brilliant insight. Annabelle, what would you say to that about insights and working relationships?
Well, I mean, I don't know how I follow through time and in time. That's just blown my mind. That's just unlocked so many things for me. So thank you for that, Brian.
You're welcome.
For me, I think communication is really critical with everyone. So by that, I mean your partner, your line manager, your team, but actually, and most importantly, with yourself, like really working out for you, what's the thing that's most important in this moment, and using that as your mantra for all your life choices, whether it be at work or be at home or for yourself. I think trust, Lux, you've already talked about this. I think it's so critical. Flexible working only works in an environment where you are trusted, your line manager trusts you, your team trusts you, and that is critical. It has to be built on a foundation of trust. But then 2 practical pieces of insight. I used to sort of sneak out on my days early because it was sort of seen as a bit of a half day, leaving at 4:30 to pick up my kids. And we used to have quite a culture of presenteeism. And now I have a real thing about leaving loudly. I'm going to make a big noise that I'm leaving loudly to go and pick up my children, or now remotely on our Teams chat going, I'm going for a run at 3 in the afternoon because that's what I need to do. Otherwise I'm going to go crazy. And by myself leaving loudly, remotely or physically, it enables my team to do the same. And whether they have caring responsibilities or not, I want them to feel empowered and permissioned to work in a way that works for them, because I trust them to deliver ultimately. And then the only other tip is, and I think I'm with Brian on this, being organized. So looking forward, my work calendar on my in my inbox is all sort of color coded to help me work out how I'm spending my time, factoring in prep time for meetings, and then, you know, stuff to do with the girls is in purple so that my team know that's, you can't put anything in unless you speak to me, because they will always come first. So there are, you know, those would be my tips really, if you like.
Brilliant. Yes, I'm an absolute advocate of the color coding. I think it just really helps. I'm a really visual person, so you just know what time is. And the go, no-go times is really key. And I think a really important point that you've raised there is that shadow of a leader, especially as a manager or anyone of influence, that people will follow what you do. So if you leave loudly, I love that, to whatever it may be, people will follow that. And it's a really great role modeling technique. Brilliant. Our final question then, to my brilliant panel, is what do you wish you'd known before you started working flexibly? Brian, would you lead us on that one, please?
Sure, yeah, and I love the color coding of calendars. I definitely do that. Sometimes I do it on objects, sometimes I do it on energy levels as well, like coding things differently if they're going to give you energy or take energy away. But that's a whole other topic. I think what I wish I'd learned is that, you know, I need to decide what I want for myself, and that no one's going to tell you that it's okay. Your boss is always going to want more time in the office. Your family's always going to want more time at home. Your friends are always going to want more time. And you just have to kind of decide for yourself. And I think also it's taken me probably 20 years to take my parents off a pedestal, to take the corporate world off a pedestal, and just realize, you know, it is what it is. Like, your parents are humans just like me, just trying to do their best, and the corporate world isn't always everything you hoped it would be. And I think, you know, if I was starting my career again and just deciding what I wanted and not trying to meet everyone else's expectations, not trying to make other people proud, but just trying to do what I wanted, and yeah, I think I might have done things differently. I think I've got there in the end, and I've still got plenty of energy left to give to my work. So yeah, I think it's just figure out what works for you, and especially other working dads as well. Just often scared to kind of, you know, work part-time or work flexibly because they're worried what the boss will say, worried what their friends will say. Well, just do what's best for you. Forget everyone else, and if you do what's best for you, then everyone else will probably support you anyway. And if they don't, then that's their problem. So yeah, I just encourage you to figure out what you want and go for it, and don't worry too much about what anyone else thinks, because they probably don't really care.
Brilliant advice. Thank you. Annabelle?
I liked all of that, Brian, and I would agree with all of that. The 2 things for me were, I wish someone had said to me before I went back 4 days a week, you're not less of an employee because you don't work full time, that you're still positively contributing to the business and your company still want you, and they see the merit in having you in the building. I
think we might have lost Annabelle there. While she's just coming back. Lux, would you want to respond to that one?
Sure. I think for me, what I would have wanted to know is that flexible working does not just mean working part-time, working 4 days a week. Because in my head, I used to think I still have to do 9 to 5. I still have to put my kids at breakfast and after school club for the other 4 days to ensure that I can deliver. Now I've got this sense of, you know, my time is in my control. if I want to work more flexibly, if I want to pick up my kids early, and having that culture of understanding that this level of trust, and also the level that you have the confidence to have that conversation. I think there was a lot of fear before of feeling, no, if I'm working part-time, I have to work harder and I have to think about working in the evenings or later just to make sure I'm able to deliver. Actually, that's not the case. It's working more efficiently and more creatively. And actually, as parents and as carers who have other responsibilities and have responsibility outside of that, you learn to be creative because that's what you do day in, day out. So actually, if I had known that before I started, I think I would have looked at flexible working in a completely different light.
Brilliant. Some fantastic advice there.
I really agree with you, Lux, because, you know, even coming on this panel, I have imposter syndrome because it's like, oh, you can talk about being a flexible worker. And I spent about like an hour or so thinking, do I work flexibly? And like really having to think about it, because I don't work officially part-time. I don't work a few hours. But you're right, Lux, there's so much more to it than that, and so much more about kind of, you know, the building blocks of your time and where you put things. It doesn't need to be a rigid formula, does it?
No, it doesn't. And what works for one doesn't work for another. And that's absolutely fine as well. And I think what's resonated from me during the conversation is, you know, that trust, that collaboration, perhaps being a bit assertive about what works for you and what doesn't. But then also, you know, just thinking what makes me work at my best. I can see Annabelle has rejoined us. Brilliant. You were cut off there in your prime. So we're dying to hear your response to the final question of what do you wish you'd known before you started working flexibly? What would your top tips be, Annabelle?
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Did you get any of my response? Shall I just
you were saying that you wish you'd felt like you were still a valued employee, even if you're working. Well, you say half day. Leaving at 4:30 is a pretty full day for me. But leaving early, you still felt that you were valued by the company. I think that's where you.
Yeah, being valued, and also I wish someone had said, be bold. You know, like ask for the rise that you think you deserve. Ask why you weren't considered for a project. Put your hat in the ring for those like extracurricular projects that you're super passionate about. You know, I think those would be the two things that I wish someone had said to me earlier on in my flexible working journey. I think if you ask my boss now, she'd be like, you're all of those things. So that's fine, but I've had to learn that the hard way. So I think if someone had shortcutted that for me, I'd have loved that.
Brilliant. And I guess throughout the insights that you've given on this, hopefully you have shortcutted it for the people that are watching this. So some fantastic insights. Thank you so much. You've been a brilliant panel. And I'll certainly be taking some of those top tips back to my organisation.
Thank you very
much. Thanks so much.
Thank you.